The long and short of it is that it doesn't matter really. What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bex, BEX. We are continuing the law school series in this week's video. We're gonna talk about things that no one really tells you when you're applying to law school. I would say that this would be tips that I didn't find on the LSAC webpage. These are things that I more so figured out on my way as I was applying and it kind of felt like, wow, I received this information just a little too late. So I'm hoping that what this video will do is that someone will come across it while you're either studying for the LSAT or you're on the way to apply to all of your dream schools, and hopefully this information helps you. The number one thing that I feel like no one tells you about applying to law school is in regards to finances, and not necessarily about like financing law school, because at the end of the day is that law school is expensive, right? Or can be expensive without scholarships. But I'm talking more so about the law application process. It comes a time when you're thinking about, okay, I've got to make a list of all the schools that I want to apply to, right? And eventually you start narrowing it down, and some of the more ambitious kids are probably going to be, shooting for about 15 to 20 law schools. Some of them kind of on average, I feel like the average is about applying to around 10 to 15 schools. And then there are some kids who are pretty confident in their skills, or maybe funds are low and you apply to maybe less than 10 schools. It is your prerogative to apply to however many schools you want to apply to based on your own statistics and based on whatever you can afford. For me personally, when I was applying, or at least making my list, I was very selective and I felt like I had to narrow it down to less than 15, because as I was making the list, the price next to it was starting to add up. Not only was it the price of attending the school, right? It was also the amount of money I was gonna have to pay just in the application process alone. So that's the application fee and the LSAT score report fee. Most application fees, they're around $80, and all of the LSAT score report fees are $45. So you think, okay, maybe that's not expensive for applying to 5 schools, but when you're trying to apply to over 10 schools, I mean, even if you're just applying to 8 schools, that number really starts to add up, and it becomes scary when you think about it. For some people, it deters you from applying to certain schools or a certain number of schools, and might add a little bit more stress because you're worried that you can't apply to a wide range of schools because that number just keeps adding and adding and adding, and you don't want to have to pay $3,000 just to apply to law school and not even know if you're going to get into any of these schools. But what I don't want to happen is for you to get deterred from applying to as many schools as you would like to apply to. Things that you should know though in advance: if you get your list ready early enough before the applications are even live, you can possibly help reduce the cost of the application processing fees, like the application fee. There's so many waivers out there, and they might not all be to your dream schools, but if your priority is just applying to a wide range of schools to make sure that you have, you kind of just make sure you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, then I highly suggest checking on schools that are waiving their fees. Now with that, you also have to make sure you're doing this far enough in advance, because some schools will say that if you apply early enough, like if you apply by their early decision deadline, then your application fee will be waived. But if you're gonna apply by their regular decision, then you're definitely gonna have to pay the $80. So look at your list, check out when these deadlines are, make sure that none of them are asking you to apply super early if you haven't even taken your LSAT yet, or you don't plan on applying to any school's early decision. Make sure you check that out, and that could really help you cut some costs down over the long run and allow you to apply to more schools than you probably initially thought you could even apply to. And I'm not even talking like you have to apply in September or November, October. Like you don't even have to apply in the fall. This is more so just making sure you get in your applications by February, which is most schools, that's their regular decision deadline. So just get in your applications a little bit sooner and you can avoid the application fee. So moving beyond financing the application process, in regards to financing your legal education, There are lots of scholarships out there. You've just got to really be able to take the time to look into this stuff. Some of them have pretty early deadlines, especially ones that are worth in that like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 range. So if you want to apply for those scholarships, then you want to make sure that you're doing it ahead of time in the fall if you're planning on applying like early winter or maybe even late winter. Not only outside scholarships, but scholarships within your school's programs. So there are several schools that have like presidential scholarships or dean scholarships, just like so many different types of scholarships, whether they're geared particularly towards minorities or geared towards a specific kind of candidate, like someone who's interested in doing a dual program, like a dual MBA and JD. There's so many different specific ones. So again, it's all going to be relative to where you're trying to apply to, but make sure you are also, as you're looking at the application fee waiver deadlines, that you're also looking at the deadlines for scholarship applications, which could significantly cut down the cost of your legal education. Moving beyond finances and money, something that I was never really told about, this all can be subjective relative to when you decide you want to take your LSAT, what you got going on in your life, again, maybe even finances, but nobody really talks about the timing of applying to law school, right? There's really no right time. In my opinion, there's no right time to apply to law school. But beyond just even if you're going to be applying after college or have some work experience, no one really talks about the time of year that you should be applying, or whether or not it even makes a difference if you apply at a particular time of the year. What I was thinking was, I'm going to be taking a gap year, and if the deadline of this application for regular decision and says March 1st, I'm going to be applying around February, end of February. But some people like to think that, and I genuinely don't know if this is true. I don't know if there are statistics to back this up of whether or not applying sooner, like applying in late fall or early winter, increases your chances of getting into law school if you know that that law school is super competitive. So I have not ever really looked into this to look at the numbers myself, but I personally am here to tell you that it does not matter if you apply the day that the deadline says or 3 months before the deadline. I get it. I think it mentally helps you so that you know you're not a part of that last little bit, that last pool of applicants who are trying to squeeze in and get those last couple of seats. But I promise you that I believe that I had an equal opportunity, or so I think. I had an equal opportunity of getting into these schools as somebody who applied in November. And there are websites where people will put up like Reddit or I can't even remember the name of the other website, but there's this other website where people literally put their admission statuses, and people will put, oh, like this was my LSAT, this was my GPA, and this is the school I applied to, and I either got accepted, rejected, waitlisted, or still pending. And there are kids, I remember when I applied, there were still people who had applied to that same school, but they applied in November. So they'll tell you when they applied, and they had applied in November, and their application was still pending. And so I had just turned mine in. So I really think another thing that happens is that schools do not completely start reviewing your application until all of the application materials are in. So there might be some people who started their application sooner, but then couldn't actually complete their application until later because they still needed to get like another recommendation in, or maybe they needed to put their final transcript in. I don't know what, but I just genuinely do not believe, this is my opinion, I do not believe that applying early actually makes that much of a difference. But if you still need some time to get your recommendation letters in, if you still want to keep tweaking your personal statement, and if you decide that you need to take another LSAT, I just don't freak out. Just relax. It's fine. Just get it in by the deadline. Get it in before or on the deadline, and you're good to go. Another thing that I think people don't really emphasize or really talk about enough about the law school application process is the resume. I think it is very clear that your LSAT and your GPA are really gonna matter. And then I think people then kind of shift over to the personal statement as a way to make a case for yourself, make yourself seem a little more interesting. I think it usually goes numbers and then personal statement and then your resume. But I think it should actually go numbers, resume, and then personal statement equal to resume. I think both of those things have equal weight as to in convincing the admission staff about your potential to be a good law student. It's like your resume, and then your personal statement is a more flowery kind of roundabout way of explaining your resume. Your resume is like the dry version of you, right? Just you on paper. And then the personal statement is kind of a way to make your resume seem more interesting. But I think that it is important that you really make sure prior to your LSAT, prior to writing your personal statement, that you have a good resume going into just your adult life in general. If you never needed one for undergrad, now you're definitely going to need to have a good, clean, crisp one. And this doesn't mean that you necessarily need a resume with a bunch of, doodles and a bunch of graphs. Just one that's clean and crisp. It has your name, it has a good header, and everything is very clear about what you've done. Usually they allow you to do like 1 to 2 pages. You don't need to do much more beyond just having, black and white, clean and crisp. But I definitely think that there should be more of an emphasis on the resume, because it kind of helps for the admission staff to see like, okay, this person might have had a lower GPA than we would normally want to accept at this school, but they were playing a sport, they were in lots of meaningful extracurricular activities, they also might have worked a job, they were taking a very heavy course load, they did some sort of academic publication. There's so many things that kind of contextualize, okay, maybe this is why their GPA isn't up to par, or maybe this is why we should kind of overlook their lower LSAT. The resume can actually help boost and add to your case a lot more than what people might actually think. Another thing that people should harp on this a little bit more, or at least stress why it's important, recommendations make a very big difference, I believe, in your application process, and being selective about who vouches for you till your law schools is very important. If you're still in school, or you're undergrad, or you're kind of like a year or two out of undergrad and you have pretty good connection with staff from your undergrad, I think it's very important to try and get people who can speak to your academic abilities. Specifically, if you were a social science student, people who can vouch for your writing ability. If you ever did any capstone or theses, anyone who can speak on that should be writing your recommendation. They give you an option. Some schools will allow you to write 4 recommendations. Some schools will say you only need 1. So it really depends. And when they're giving you that range and only a minimum number, you have to be a little bit, you have to think kind of, okay, what am I applying to this school for? Am I putting something specific in my personal statement about this school as to why I want to attend this school in particular and their JD program in particular? Should I have maybe just 2 recommenders who can speak to my general writing skills, and then 1 who can speak to my specific skill that might be necessary for a particular program that you're applying to? For example, if you're applying to a dual MBA JD, maybe if you ever took a business class in undergrad, having a professor who you took a business class with write you a recommendation could help boost your application when you're applying to a dual program. If you were involved in a lot of extracurriculars, you might want to kind of go to those people first, because maybe those are the people who know your personality the best, because you spend time with them outside of school hours and they can kind of speak to your character. And I think that it is important, maybe if you want to have somebody who can speak to your character per se, to write you a recommendation. The long and short of it is that it doesn't matter really. You're using your personal statement to tell them about your character, right? There should be some personality in your personal statement. So that's where that will come through. That's where your personality should shine through, and they should get a better sense of who you are as a person. In your recommendation, I don't believe that they are going to care as much about what kind of person you are, or your personality, or your fun-loving spirit, as much as they're going to care about, does this person know how to write well? I think it's very difficult to kind of understand which one is which, whether you should be using your personal statement to show off your legal writing skills, or if you should be using your recommendations to help vouch for the kind of person that you are. But in my opinion, that's what I would separate the two as. Okay, I got a couple more, but the last one is that taking time off of school, so taking time away from undergrad before applying to law school can actually be very beneficial. It just kind of depends on what you're doing with that time though. At first, I thought that I was the exception to the rule about applying to law school. I thought the majority of people were just applying straight out of undergrad. And I was like, dang, am I being lazy by not just going straight through? Should I have just studied senior year for my LSAT and then just have tried to get into, you know, a law school? Am I just being too relaxed about this? But as I was going through Reddit, which again is going to be like I keep talking about Reddit, but it actually like, it is, and no one really wants to like admit it, but everybody's on Reddit, okay guys? Like especially during the application cycle, everybody's on Reddit trying to suss everything out. People are trying to figure out who's applying where, what are their stats, you know, what have they been waitlisted? Are they moving on the wait list? Like everybody is on Reddit during the application cycle. So as much as I wouldn't want to admit that this is a resource that you should be going to, it really is. So use Reddit, but use it wisely. Don't get stuck on there because it can be a never-ending dark hole abyss. Anyways, like I was saying, back on track, Rebecca, back on track. It just depends on how you use that time. So I thought I was like the exception to the rule. And then I realized that there were actually so many people who are either like switching careers or they just took the time off to like be a paralegal for, you know, a few years. There's some people who took off more than 5 years and they decided they want to go to law school. It can actually benefit you. Not only can it benefit you as a person so that you can really decide if law school is really something that you want to do, but it can also benefit your application. If you get a job or if you volunteer somewhere, it's actually an experience that you can talk about in your application, in your personal statement, something else to put on your resume. It really does help, and it also shows the law school that you are a more well-rounded person, that you have experienced life, real adult life, and that you are very sure about law school, that this is a serious decision that you're trying to make. I think sometimes law school admissions people, they've been doing this for so long that they can really like see who's just going to law school because they didn't really have like something else to do, versus those who are really serious about this decision, and that's important to them because of the money. All right guys, like they're not trying to admit somebody who's just kind of like on the fence about going to law school. They don't want to waste an acceptance on somebody who's kind of like on the border versus somebody who's taken 5 years off of school to be a paralegal or work as a legal assistant and is now deciding that like law school is definitely what they want to do, and they're definitely going to go if they're accepted. They have looked through so many applications for so many years that they kind of know what to look for in terms of figuring out like who's really about that life and who's not. If you are kind of on the fence about law school, just take a little time off. Even a year can give you all the clarity that you need to really be able to decide. I mean, that's all I took. I took technically like a year and a half off of school, and that gave me the clarity to kind of live my life a little bit after graduation and then really come back to it and decide like, am I really about to sit through, you know, 12 weeks of studying for this LSAT and then spend money on applying to law school? Like, am I really about to do this? And I made that decision and I didn't look back. Well, I looked back once, but that was because I was having a little insecure mental moment and I had to, you know, I just had to come to my senses real quick. But for the most part, I knew deep down inside, I want to be a lawyer. Like, I'm excited to go to law school if I am blessed enough to get accepted. And luckily enough, I was, and I'm on my way. So that's really it, guys. Those are my tips or things that I kind of wish I would have known instead of just figuring them out along the way. But again, there aren't things that are gonna make or break your law school acceptance chances. Not knowing about what time of the year you should be applying is not gonna hurt your chances, I don't believe. Would it be nice to kind of know to look out for application fee waiver deadlines early enough so that you could cut your costs on application fees? Yeah, that would be nice, right? Right? I know. So I really hope that these tips help you as you are going into this next cycle of applications. I think that there are a lot of great opportunities for people to learn as you go, but also a lot of great opportunities for people to learn from other people's mistakes. These are things that I wish I would have known sooner rather than later. Better late than never. But never late is better. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you liked it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. I really think people aren't doing it when I'm telling you to. If you watched this video and you liked it, like it, okay? And if you didn't like it, then thumbs down so I know you didn't like it, and I'll take this video down. I'll pretend like it never existed, I'll delete it, and it'll never be on my channel again. Comment below before I wrap up this series if there's anything else that I should be talking about in terms of talking about my experience with applying to law school. And subscribe to my channel, please, because we are really heading towards like 150 subscribers to 200, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you so much for subscribing, and I will see you guys next week. Bye guys, thanks.